Welcome to another episode of Erik Wait Whiskey Studies, and in this video, going to do a review of the Highland Park 12-year-old Viking Honor. So this video is part of a series that I'm doing studying for the Council of Whiskey Masters. I'm going to cover the history of Highland Park Distillery and then do a review of this whiskey. Highland Park Distillery is located in Kirkwall on the largest of the Orkney Islands to the north of Scotland. It is currently the northernmost Scottish whiskey distillery. The distillery takes its name from the area called High Park, which the distillery was founded on. In 1798, Highland Park Distillery was founded by Davis Robertson. The local smuggler and businessman Magnus Unsen previously operated an illicit whiskey production on the site. In 1816, John Robinson, an excise officer who arrested Magnus Unsen, took over production. In 1826, Highland Park Distillery obtained a license and the distillery was taken over by Robert Borwick. In 1840, Robert Borwick's son, George Borwick, took over the distillery, but it deteriorated. In 1869, George Borwick's younger brother, James Borwick, inherited Highland Park Distillery. James Borwick was a priest and did not consider the distillation of spirits compatible with his priesthood, so he attempted to sell it. In 1895, James Grant of Glenlivet Distillery bought Highland Park Distillery. In 1898, Highland Park Distillery expanded from 2 to 4 stills. In 1937, Highland Distillers bought Highland Park Distillery. In 1979, Highland Distillers invests considerably in marketing Highland Park as single malt, which increases sales. In 1986, Highland Park Distillery opened a visitor center. In 1997, the Highland Park 18 and 25-year-old were launched. In 1999, Highland Distilleries is acquired by Edrington Group and William Grant & Sons. In 2000, Visit Scotland awarded Highland Park a 5-star visitor attraction. In 2005, Highland Park 30-year-old, 16-year-old, duty-free, and Ambassador's Cask 1984 were released. In 2006, the second edition of Highland Park's Ambassador Cask and 1996 Highland Park 10-year-old were released. In 2007, Highland Park the Rebus 20, a 21-year-old duty-free, a 38-year-old, and 39-year-old were released. In 2008, Highland Park 40-year-old, 3rd and 4th edition of Ambassador's Cask were released. In 2009, Highland Park 15 Earl Magnus was released. In 2010, Highland Park 50-year-old, St. Magnus 12-year-old, Orcadian Village 1970, and 4 duty-free vintages were released. In 2011, Highland Park Vintage 1978, Leif Erikson, and 18-year-old Earl Hakon are released. In 2012, the Highland Park Thor and 21-year-old were released. In 2013, Highland Park Loki and the Warriors Duty Free are released. In 2014, Highland Park Freya and Dark Origins were released. In 2015, Highland Park Odin was released. In 2016, Highland Park Hobbister Ice-Free Edition are released. And in 2016, the Highland Park Ingvar and King Christian I are released. In 2017, Highland Park Valkyrie, Dragon Legend, Voyage of the Raven are released. And in 2017, Highland Park Shale, Full Volume, The Dark, and The Light are released. In 2018, new bottlings for duty-free include Highland Park Spirit of the Bear, Loyalty of the Wolf, Wings of the Eagle, and Limited Valknut are released. In 2019, Highland Park Twisted Tattoo, Valfather, and Triskelion are released. The Highland Park 12-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey is aged for 12 years in European and American sherry seasoned oak casks. It's It's bottled at 43% alcohol by volume. Prices range between $42 and $70. The average price is around $58. So in this series, I'm going to do a review of this 12-year-old and the 18-year-old, and during the live stream, I'll talk about another 12-year-old, a special release from the distillery, as well as the cask strength, do a comparison of all these whiskeys. Now, generally, they're using the same spirit, the same cask. The main difference between these whiskeys are what are the ages and what the ABV is. On this one, I get sort of your standard sherry notes, dried black fruit notes. There's a little bit of barbecue character there. Figs, dates, raisins, a lot of spice, cinnamon, nutmeg, clove, a little bit of pepper, a little bit of vanilla, caramel, and a very, very moderate and well interwoven smoke character on the palate. If you like sherry cask whiskeys, and I do, this is one that's ready to go right out of the bottle. You know, some of them, I love cask strength whiskeys. Some of the top whiskeys in my top 10 for 2022 were, cask strength, very high ABV whiskeys. But sometimes I'm in the mood for a whiskey that, you know what, I'm just gonna pour myself a dram, go sit down, read a book. I don't want to have to tinker with the whiskey. And this is one of those that, I don't need to add anything to it. I don't have anything to retract from it. It's got plenty going on, even at 43% ABV, because they're using some really nice casks. As I'm talking now, I can still taste it. On the palate, I get a nice savory barbecue note, get a real light interwoven smoke, loads of spice. I get a little bit of pepper, cinnamon, a little bit of black licorice or anise. There's figs, dates, raisins, a little bit of sort of an orange character, in which maybe you're taking oranges and you put clove into it. It's a little thin, quite silky. There's no real bite to it. And it's mostly a lot of spice that shows up on the back end. The smoke and dried black fruit notes are up front. It's got a real nice long finish. This is a whiskey that is a pour and go whiskey. You don't have to diddle with it. You don't need to add any water to it. Adding water to it is not going to help it anymore. It's not going to open it up anymore. If you did, you'd actually probably be taking it down to the level of the Highland Park Magnus, which is around 40 ABV, which is a little too soft. It's all right, but it's a little too soft. I did a review already. It goes for like 35 bucks. It's a little bit cheaper. But this one is good to go as is. You don't have to have a cask strength whiskey to deliver a lot of flavor. What you need is really good cask. I like the low to moderate amount of smoke that's really interwoven really well. So it's a good to go nice whiskey, and I think it's spot on for the price point, given the price of whiskeys these days. Now, what would I give it in terms of a score? I'm gonna go solid 88 points. Solid 88 points. What would I want to get it over 90? A little bit more oomph, particularly in the mid palate. A little bit more oomph. The finish is nice, but it could use a little more oomph in the mid palate, and perhaps a different texture to it. I like something a little more silky, maybe a little bit more weight to it. But one thing that's gonna really bring that is bump up the ABV. Other than that, it's a real nice whiskey. If you're new to whiskey, this is one I'm particularly gonna recommend as a beginner whiskey, particularly if you're not accustomed to peated whiskeys. And the Highland Park 12-year-old was actually a runner-up in the Oswas. So apparently the whiskey community thinks something about the Highland Park 12 as well. All right, that's it for this review. If you subscribe to this channel, I want to thank you very much. If you've not yet subscribed, because you like watching my videos, but actually subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I go live or post a new video. And until next time, Skål. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out these other whiskey videos.